lives of the Brotherhood.
Yeah, that was through Mike Hinson, and Mike Hinson's fiance knew the manager, Michael Jeffrey, for Jimi Hendrix, and that's how Hendrix got brought into this. But he also shared the director of the movie, Chuck Wine, who was a protege of Warhol. They had this fascination with extraterrestrial space brothers, and people that were involved in the making of this movie, which is a weird mishmash of psychedelic kind of blather and Hendrix live performance and so forth. You know, that there was this spaceship that like flew over the beach while they were filming the movie, and they captured it on film, but then the film mysteriously disappeared and so forth. Yeah, there's no evidence of that at all. not just in the film, but just in general. But
there seldom is with UFOs. But
yeah. But the one thing that did actually happen was Hendrix comes and he plays this show up on the slopes of the volcano, and there's a tent in the middle of the audience, and that's where all the Brotherhood guys that didn't want their faces on screen were sitting. And they got to, you know, hang out with Hendrix for a couple of weeks, so that was pretty fun. But again, starring in a movie where, like, one of the more memorable episodes in the movie is Mike Hinson and a couple other Brotherhood buddies of his carving open a surfboard and pulling out what's purported to be a bag of hash.
Oy vey.
Under a poster of Richard Nixon, you know.
Yes.
Caption, "Would you buy a used car from this man?" Question mark. Was probably not the smartest thing to do. And then this movie premieres in Laguna Beach.
No, it's about as smart as wearing, putting a bumper sticker that says "drunkie" on the back of your car. But yes.
Now they claim that they did.
Which Dean Martin did, by the way.
Henson and his buddies claim that they made this scene because the cops were already cutting open surfboards that were going back and forth between California and Hawaii, and they just wanted that, you know, to end so that, you know, that wouldn't happen. Then they were losing all their favorite boards and so forth. But again, you know, as soon as that movie comes out, it's like the DEA realized, my God, what these local cops in Orange County have been trying to tell us all along about how, you know, nefarious these hippies are. They're not just a bunch of stoned, you know, freaks hanging out growing vegetables. They really are, you know, they mean business, and we need to, like, take this down now. So it was just a few months after that movie came out that this huge, what at that point would have been the biggest narco raid, like, in the history of the very young war on drugs, you know, and which was started by Richard Nixon, essentially. And the DEA was formed within months after this raid. They arrest people in Laguna Beach, up and down the coast of California, Oregon, Maui, Afghanistan, and they just wrap it up. Of course, they didn't get everybody.
Well, that's the thing. Is what happened to these guys? I mean, the code is. You've done a lot of reporting in the past 2 years, you know, even before your book came out, about what happened to some of these characters, and where did they all end up, or some of them end up?
Well, a lot of them lived underground successfully for years. The ironic thing is, despite the government declaring victory over the Brotherhood in 1972, these guys spent very little time in jail, as it turned out, and went right back to doing what they had been doing all along, and smuggling hash from Afghanistan, literally right up until when the Shah of Iran fell and the Soviets invaded Afghanistan, from the same Toki brothers that were their sources as early as 1967. So, you know, the cops were never able to shut that down. Only the Red Army was able to. And they continued doing this stuff, and some of these guys were not even captured until last year. The last of them that was indicted in 1972 comes home after spending 3 decades in Nepal and is promptly arrested at the airport in San Francisco.
Why did they even bother after 3 decades?
It turned out that the DA that wanted to try this case was the son of Cecil Hicks, who was the DA during the big Brotherhood grand jury case in 1972 that brought down the Brotherhood. So he had grown up, you know, hearing about all this, and I guess he wanted to follow in his father's footsteps. But ultimately, they worked out a plea deal where this poor old guy, who's 70 at this point, hadn't committed any crimes in a long time. They just let him go after a couple months behind bars.
And he went back to?
Straight back to Nepal.
Right.
Yeah. That was a...
How long did they keep him in a local jail?
A good 2 or 3 months, and he was facing pretty serious time. You know, but he was able to work out a deal for time served if he just pled guilty to this one hashish smuggling case. He had the misfortune of going on exactly one smuggling trip, but it was with Glenn Lind, who became the one member of the original group of brothers to turn state's evidence. And so you know, that was very public knowledge, that one particular trip, and there's no way he could, you know, deny that he had been involved in it. So, you know.
Last question. We have 1 minute. Have any people that come to you after the book's published and with news stories?
Yeah.
Any good ones?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. There was one guy that I had sort of heard about but didn't even write about in the book, who it turned out had lived with Leary and traveled to the Himalayas with him, and this guy went on to become like a successful Hollywood director. I don't want to mention his name, but like for children's movies and animated TV shows during the 1980s, so that was pretty funny. But I just most recently heard from a guy who features in the end of the book, where a person named Owen Caldwell becomes an informant and flies to Afghanistan and helps bust up a big hash oil smuggling operation. It was a complete comedy of errors. And this guy, never had talked to anybody about his involvement in that, but he sort of played this bizarre role in trying to make a bunch of money, but what he ended up doing was creating an opportunity for the cops to infiltrate the Brotherhood. So, yeah.
I'm sure that a lot more people are going to come out of the woodwork as
I think people realize that two things: it's all done now. The case is over.
Exactly. Especially with that guy getting off recently, it seems to put a period at the end of that.
Yeah, the part of the Brotherhood story that involves cops is definitely over. And the other thing is that all these people are at an age now where if they don't talk about it, they're not really going to be able to. No one's going to remember it.
Exactly. Fascinating book, Orange Sunshine.
Thank you so much.
Very good meeting you.
Likewise.
Thanks for coming to the studio with me today.
Cheers.